Right, welcome to my sample unit. The one I've chosen for reasons of my own totally is Earth's Place in Space. It's a Year 5 unit, and as you can see in the Primary Connections folder, it follows a particular format, what we're going to call from this point forward the anatomy of the Primary Connections unit. It essentially is the E5 or the 5Es model. Going through, we can see that every page will have its table of contents embedded within every unit. And we can see here that it's fairly conventional, taking us through some work in regard to Galileo, and model arguments, solar systems, and of course sun scientists. And more importantly, getting down to the connection of this unit. One of the reasons I like it is because it's got a strong literacy focus. And I actually believe if you can develop a student's literacy toolkit, what Wirtz called or christened and Vygotsky adopted, as a toolkit for cultural understanding, we can see that if we can immerse students in skills, we can then immerse them in deeper understandings. So we can see here we've got collaborative learning teams, that is working together, a science journal, every scientist needs a journal, a word wall, a TWLH chart, evidence-based discussions, a glossary, all very, very literacy-based strategies for science learning. Now this document's 100 pages long, so a lot of it's made up of some induction materials, the foreword, why is this unit is what it is, why primary connections are what they are, and where they came from and why they exist, and ultimately, of course, how they connect to, in this case, literacy, and they also connect to the Australian curriculum. So we can see here that assessment in this particular unit covers 3 different streams: diagnostic, formative, and summative. Now this is really important for assessment task number 1, because your assessment task, for instance, may look at engagement. And engagement is a topic that falls largely within diagnostic assessment, when a teacher explores students' misconceptions prior to deconstructing those misconceptions, and at the formative stage, going through and reconstructing student understandings. So it's really important to look in your unit at the assessment points, because these assessment points will be pretty critical, very critical, to how you analyse your Paishakusha and your understandings of your topic that you demonstrate through the Paishakusha discourse. So this unit links science with literacy very, very explicitly, and for that reason I chose it as a unit well worth looking at. We can see here that at alignment with the Australian curricula, and we can see that it actually covers many science understandings. The ones relevant to our unit of study, of course, are biological, earth and space, and of course the chemical and physical sciences we cover next term for those of you who join us. But notice we've got here our 3 substrands. We've got our science understanding, our human endeavour, and inquiry skills. Now some units you'll find are very, very inquiry skills focused. Some units will focus on human endeavour, that is inventions, creations, and the impact of humans on the planet. Now that is a really, really rich science area, so don't discard that one. Traditional teaching has us focusing very much on science understanding, that is, the content. Now I would argue very much that in a good science classroom, understandings, human endeavours, and skills should be equally weighted. Once you get into the module, of course, there's some implement and suggestions there on safety, on how to clean up and manage your classroom. Now you will find, as we saw in last week's work, that more than 30% of classrooms, particularly in Education Queensland schools, do not have a wet area. So your capacity to conduct science safely and to do lots of hands-on science is going to be limited. As a teacher, you're going to have to think outside the box and do a lot of situated science, a lot of home-based science, and a lot of observational science. We'll talk about that later through the course. The unit as a glance, there you can see it's set up according to the 5Es. Now I'm not going to talk too much about this, I'm going to allow you to explore. But in every unit you look at, it will have a certain anatomy, and this is true also for the secondary units, because I've chosen for this course the Science by Doing and the Primary Connections models as exemplars. Now they are very good models, but as I said, I've got some cautions with them. They're still very, very content-based. They focus very much on science understandings, even though they follow the 3 stages of inquiry very, very well, and the 5 stages of Brybe's 5Es model. So we can see it goes and elaborates a strong alignment with the Australian curriculum. and we can see that the connections are quite explicitly listed there, as are all of the standards and connections to the substrands and all of the elaborations and content descriptors. Really, really good to get your head around those aspects. Finally, when we look at the science strands, it shows how the strands work together. That actually science is governed by a series of overarching ideas, and those overarching ideas give rise to 3 different strands, and within those strands, of course, we have the substrands of the science understandings, the 2 themes of human endeavour, and of course the 5 core principles of science inquiry. So get to know this curriculum. You will discover it to be a rich and really, really exciting document. And what more, it'll give you, knowledge over the planning and the development of your own curriculum and classroom practice. So it goes on to talk about achievement standards, and of course there are 5 achievement standards weighted A to E. Get to know them, because when you talk about curriculum, you're always going to have to talk about achievement standards. It's really, really important. And here's Earth's place in space, and it takes you through each of the general capabilities. That is how this science unit connects to the 7 general capabilities that all curriculum is designed to activate within our learning populations. Have a good look at your unit of study. It's really important that you understand the cross-curriculum priorities. And as we can see here, there are 3 of them: Aboriginal Torres Strait Islanders, Histories and Cultures, Asia and Australia's engagement with Asia, and a really interesting one on sustainability. Now, all of these are embedded in the units that you're going to study in both Science by Doing and also in our primary connections units. It goes on to elaborate connections to English and maths, and of course it gives you some teacher background. And this will be really, really useful for you too for assessment task 2, so that when you do your own digital cards, you can see what teacher background information really needs to look, feel and smell like. And of course it goes on and looks at the lesson and takes you through each of the different steps involved in that lesson. Have a good look at the anatomy of your science units.